What is happening, ladies and gents, and welcome to another episode of Talk to Me. You know it, it's the show where I get my friends to talk to me. And this one's different. This one is awesome because it's all thanks to you guys. About a month ago, if you follow us on TikTok, we put up a TikTok about an app that I've been using for years. I've been using this app for ages. The app is called RunPee, and Joseph's going to do his little bit of magic here. He's going to put a TikTok up in the background, do his thing. And you guys made that TikTok blow up. In fact, you guys got it to have over 500,000 views, and it's continuing to grow each and every day. There's more than 70,000 likes. There's over 10,000 saves. So I cannot thank you guys enough, because once I saw that, and once I saw how many of you guys responded to this, I got in contact with RunPee. I said, you know what? I got to let them know, just let them know what ended up happening. And that's how I met our next guest. Dan, thank you so much for jumping on to talk to me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's awesome to have you. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're from.
Well, my name is Dan Gardner. I live in North Carolina in the United States, on the East Coast.
That's about it.
I'm a software developer.
Not awkward at all, mate.
I'm sorry, there is a little lag.
Is there? Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a software developer, and so that's how RunPee got started. I had the idea for building the app, and since I'm a software developer, I was able to build it myself. I think if I had to pay a developer to do this, it would never have made money. But since it's been like a personal project, it's worked out really well.
That's awesome. So where does the idea of RunPee come from? I heard King Kong was part of the mix, and how'd you get it? How'd it happen?
So it was opening night to go see the remake of King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong. You know who Peter Jackson is, right?
Of course, mate. Of course. I love that movie, by the way. Did you like it?
Yeah, I really did.
Okay, cool.
But it's 3 hours long.
It's a long one.
And so the inevitable happens. Like it's the story that everybody tells. Like, you're sitting in a 3-hour movie. I'm like religiously, I am not going to get up and go to the restroom during a movie.
100%.
And by the end of it, I'm like desperately in pain. Like I could not enjoy the end of the movie because I just wanted it to be over. And so as we're leaving the theater, there's a bunch of people queued up to see the next showing. And I'm thinking, I could tell them there's this scene in the middle of the movie with the bugs, and it's kind of long, it's kind of gross. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the movie. It's essentially like, what happens? They run into some giant bugs, a couple of people get eaten, yada, yada, yada. You come back to the story. And so I'm thinking like, I could tell these people, hey, you could really enjoy the whole movie if you just get up and run pee during the middle when you see the big bugs. And first, I'm not going to tell strangers, when they can pee during a movie.
For sure.
And second, I had to go pee. So like, I'm on my way. But the idea kind of sticks with me. And I chat about it with some friends. And I think I bought the domain, runpee.com, like within a month or so. But I got a job at Microsoft. And I was kind of busy. So for the next next 2.5, 3 years, I was working at Microsoft. I had no time to work on it. Kind of kicked the idea around a little bit, like, how would this work? And then I quit Microsoft to become a freelance developer. And I thought, I should build this RunPee thing. Not because it's ever going to be popular, really, very useful, but it's a good example of the kind of apps that I could build for clients. And so that's really kind of why I built it, is
so it was just a test
to have something to show off to clients and make money that way.
Mate, it's a great app. Like I was telling you off air, I've been using this app since I was 14 years old. I remember, I think I was watching, I want to say it was Interstellar. It was around that time period. And I said to my sister, I go, I can't do this. Like, literally the same thing you said. I said, it would be great if someone made an app that told me when to go to the toilet. And lo and behold, RunPee shows up on the App Store. I was like, I'm downloading that.
Mhm.
And it's one of those apps where everyone gives me the same response. When I say, hey, I've got this app called RunPee, their response is, what? What's wrong with you? Why would you need an app like that? And then I explain the app, I explain what it is, and they're like, that's actually pretty smart. Is that the same reaction you're getting
Yeah,
each and every day when it comes to this thing?
pretty much. Like and that's why it's been successful. Really,
Okay.
is it's people love to tell stories,
Yep.
and you like to tell stories that aren't going to be controversial. Nobody's going to have like a political leaning on peeing during movies and stuff, right? So it's a fun story to tell, and it's a useful thing. Like it's not just one thing. Like, oh, I made somebody laugh, but I made somebody laugh and I gave them something useful at the same time. So obviously that was not intended. It's just fortunate the way that worked out. And so our users are advertising. I like to tell people word of mouth is the best advertising money can't buy.
100%. Because what we noticed
Yeah,
from that TikTok alone is we started to see other people doing the same thing, talking about this app. They were
right.
downloading it. It was making sense for them.
Yeah,
And I think it
yeah,
helped because Oppenheimer just came out and that's a 3-hour movie. And good
yeah,
luck holding it
exactly.
through that.
And Barbie.
And
Yeah,
Barbie, yeah. So like, good
yeah.
luck holding it throughout all that. But how do you guys
hmm
do it? How do you guys choose your P times? What's the go? Do you have a team?
A little bit of a team. It's mostly me and my sister do about 90% of the movies. So we watch all of the wide release movies on opening day. If if possible, we have a guy that kind of helps out that lives in the UK. So sometimes he can see, like for instance, Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
He was able to see Mission Impossible earlier that day on opening day and get us P times so that the people in the United States would have P times when for the first showing. Um, yeah, so Rob is really great. Otherwise, we're at the first showing. We sit through, we watch the movie, we take notes. A lot of people have said like, why don't you just crowdsource it and stuff? And it's like this requires a little bit more precision than you could get out of crowdsourcing.
Sure.
First, when we did that, the 99% of the responses were, "Oh, this movie sucks. You can just run P anytime."
Okay. Yeah.
So funny, funny. The first 10,000 times you hear that,
It's the ssame joke that
not
happens over and
not at
over
all.
again.
Yeah, but you've used the app, so like
Yeah.
we'll tell you at 43 minutes and 35 seconds into the movie. So you got to know to the second
hmm
when the cue happens. And then you have to pick a cue that is memorable, but it doesn't give away a spoiler. So a cue can't be like, oh, when somebody dies. Like that doesn't work. Um, I remember one of the um, um, I think it was one of the Mockingjay movies. What are
The
those?
Hunger Game movies.
The Hunger Game. Yeah, Hunger
Yeah.
Game. Yeah, during one of the Hunger Game movies, we had a P time that was when somebody died, but we couldn't say when
Okay.
so and so dies, and so we're looking for clues, or cues really close to that are memorable that you can
Mhm.
notice. Yeah, so, anyways, you got to have that, and then you have to have the hardest part. Well, okay, the hardest part is picking. What 3-ish minute span makes a good P time, but then you have to summarize it.
Yeah.
And you have to summarize it concisely because you can't sit there and read for 5 minutes if you've got a 3-minute P time.
And that's actually my favorite
Um,
part about the app is that little
yeah,
synopsis you get. So when you've run off,
yeah,
okay, so this is what you're missing. Here's a quick synopsis. All right, you're back in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've gotten to use the RunPee app
Okay.
one time during Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. For some reason, my sister saw that movie. I couldn't see it on opening day, so she did the P times for it, and I went like the next day or something to go watch the movie. And I set the timer up, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually going to get to experience this. I may not need to pee, but we'll see how this goes. And lo and behold, like midway through the movie, I was like, okay, I could hold it until the end, but it would be uncomfortable. And like the point is to enjoy the movie. And so here's the pee time. I jump up, I run to the restroom. I'm out right outside the theater. I'm reading the synopsis. Okay, blah 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 blah. And as I'm reading, I can hear in the theater like, oh, this is happening right now. Like I'm caught up. And I'm like, wow, this actually works. Like I kind of thought like, well, I know it kind of works, but it probably doesn't work that well. But I was like, crap, this is really awesome.
And it's just one of those things. I mean, it's not something that you'd think, okay, is a life changer, but it does make the
Right.
movie going experience just a little bit better. Like my brother
Yeah,
has
of
now just
course.
started using it. A couple of my mates have just
Hmm.
started using it, and they'll see me like looking at my phone during the cinema and say, "Okay, it's the P time. I'm going." And they laugh,
Uh-huh.
but then they get up and they go with me, and they're like, "Okay, this is actually working. What happened?" And so I'll pass them the phone. They'll read the
Right.
synopsis, and we're good to go.
There you go. There you go. Yeah,
So
that's
was
no, go ahead.
sorry. So was this something that just always worked, or did you find problems going down the track? Because it's been a few years since you opened this thing.
Yeah, like I said, we've been around since uh, July 4th, 2009, as a mobile app. It actually launched as a website a year before that. And, that obviously doesn't work. But I did run into a couple of users that are like, yeah, I've been around since it was a website. Like you would literally have to go print out the P times
No way.
and take them with you. And like we printed out we gave you the P times and the cues and everything on one sheet, basically one page. And then another page would give you the same thing, but with the synopsis so that, you wouldn't read the synopsis by accident. Like that's a really clunky user experience, but
Yeah, for
people
sure.
still did that. Yeah. Um, yeah. So like over the years, it's been really awesome. And if there's any devs out there, I would say like one of the most important things you can do in an app is make it super, super easy for users to contact you, because so many of the useful tweaks and features that have been added to the app have been because of user feedback. Um, so a good one, for example, is alert P times. And for years, we had people asking, like, could you let us know when, there's certain scenes that, we don't want to see and stuff. And it's like, man, that's asking a lot. Like we're kind of busy getting P times,
Mm.
and we don't want to be distracted with, oh, and here's a trigger that might upset people. And so finally we broke down and we're like, okay, we're going to add these alert P times, and we don't guarantee that we're going to nail it, but we'll do our best. So for scenes of violent sex, usually like rape, um, animal cruelty, so like, yeah, you know
Yep.
what animal
Yep.
cruelty is. If you see an animal in distress, for instance, in the second Avatar movie, one of and we got so many emails about this thanking us. The whale hunting scene,
Yep.
the entire thing was an alert P time, unless it's like 6 minutes long. So
Okay.
usually P times are about 3 minutes, but like we gave them, here's the cue to start, and then if you don't want to see this, you can like literally just kind of wait outside of the theater, and when you hear such and such, then you can come back in. And people are like, thank you. I did not want to see that scene.
That's pretty cool.
Because it was, it's fictional whales, but
Yeah.
it's what happens. Um, yeah, so we've added a few here and there for like that don't really fit in the context of the movie. Um, Like for instance, we don't add alert P times for torture if it's a mob movie.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure. So you're
uh,
helping the audience member know what they're walking into, basically.
exactly, exactly. But you know, if it's a movie that like you don't really expect this kind of a scene, you know,
Gotta
especially
be.
like animal cruelty, you can see in various like a hunting movie,
Mhm,
and you may not expect it. But hey, here's a horse that's in distress and dies.
mhm.
You know, people may not want to see something like that. So
And
yeah.
another way that you've been
So yeah, that
helping.
was
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this
I wanted
delay's
to say that's
interesting.
yeah. Well, you are half a world away, so
Yeah,
it's
that always
remarkable that
trips me out.
it's a little influence.
That
Yeah,
always trips
I
me out.
know.
I'm in Australia, you're in North Carolina, and that actually stuffed us up
Yeah,
the first time because we got time zones wrong.
I know, right? Yeah, I was supposed to hop on at midnight, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't gonna work.
I thought our midday was a different time to it was just a mess. But we got there. But what I was trying to say, another thing that you guys helped out with, and it was probably the best feature that you added to the app in my opinion, was
Uh-huh.
telling us if there's an end credit scene. Because that
Right,
is
right.
always the question when you walk into a Marvel
Yeah.
movie or you walk into any of these new superhero movies is, all right, how many end credit scenes are there? And you guys took care of that straight away.
Yeah, well, like, you know, Marvel trained us to
Mhm.
expect an end credit scene, right? And it's really shocking at how many more movies add extra scenes. Now, this nothing ever comes without some controversy, right? So we added the anything extra. And so it's like, is there an extra scene? That's pretty easy. And then we get to movies that, well, there isn't an extra scene, but which is an obvious, easy thing to pick out. But there's a sound effect at the end of a movie or something like that. And we're like, yeah, whatever. That's not an extra scene. And then people would complain. It's like, oh, well, if you grew up with this and you read the comics and everything, you realize that that noise that lasted for 3 seconds is a hint towards the next movie and who's going to be the villain or something like that. Okay, well,
Movie
it's not an
fans are
extra
the
scene, but
worst.
there's a noise. So, and so Barbie has gotten us so much feedback on this. No, there is not an extra scene, but for the first 2 minutes of the credits, there's the vintage Barbie dolls, and so we list it as yes, there's extras, but then we tell you, like, so it tells you like yes or no, is there extras, and then we tell you what it is. You know, so it just says like for the first 2 minutes, there's Barbie vintage dolls on the screen, and then it's just scrolling credits. You can go.
Okay.
If it's an extra scene, we usually don't tell you what's in the scene. We'll say there's a mid-credit scene. So 2 minutes into the extras, there's an extra scene that lasts about a minute, and it wraps up a character's arc. And then there's just scrolling credits you can leave. Or what's happening more and more, there's scrolling credits, and then there's another extra at the very end. So like we don't tell you what is in the extra scene because that would be a spoiler.
Mhm.
But we do kind of add like this hints towards the sequel, or this wraps up a character. This is 3 second extra that isn't worth waiting for. This is basically what happens, or hey, you gotta watch this if you're a fan because it's going to be what the next movie's about.
Now,
Yeah.
ladies and gents, it's an all-encompassing app. Download it. It's called RunPee. You can get it on the App Store. You can get it on the Google Play Store. It's great. Like I said, I've been using it for years, and I was just so lucky to meet the guy that created it. You get RunPee times, so you get times that tell you when there's a good opportunity for you to go to the toilet during the movie. Sounds crazy, but trust me, once you use it the first time, you're not going back. You can also set a timer, which is very cool. Once the movie starts, you set the timer and the phone will vibrate in your pocket so that you're not pulling your phone out during the movie. That is a really cool new feature. And like Dan was just explaining, you can also find out if there's any end credit scenes. What's been the most interesting part about doing this, Dan? Because again, it's not the most conventional way of, working with movies.
Well, most apps are you build it and you're done, right? Like,
Mhm.
you make your app, it does some feature, and you ship it out there, and you might issue updates and stuff. With RunPee, it is an ongoing, never-ending. You've got to watch movies every single week, um, and so that can be stressful because you know, especially if you're sitting in a movie, it's like, oh crap, man, there are no good P
Yeah.
times in this movie.
Does it ruin the
Um,
experience for you? Going to watch movies?
uh, it doesn't help. And I think it definitely influences how I feel about a movie sometimes.
Okay.
So, for instance, I didn't particularly enjoy Oppenheimer.
Sure.
Now, I'll admit that one of the reasons is that I'm doing P times, and he doesn't have any long scenes in the movie. So,
Yeah.
to kind of get into the weeds of a P time, people usually say, like, oh, it tells you when to go pee during the boring bits. And I'm like, well, is it boring? It's really the crux of a P time is, can we summarize it succinctly, um, and accurately. So
Okay.
like a really emotional scene, that can't be a P time. Or like something that's really funny. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, and then there's this really hilarious line, blah blah blah, but you had to be there. It's like, no, well, that's not a P time. That's
Yeah.
the funniest part of the movie. So those don't work. But if there's like exposition, or our favorites are music montages. Oh, look, there's a music montage. They go on a date. Da 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 da. They end up the end of the
ABCD.
music montage. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They have sex, and you're back.
Yeah.
um, we love those. Or like in an action movie, you'll recognize this mm, before the last big battle happens. There's the getting dressed, like you're putting on the armor and stuff, and there's like a little downtime moment where they're talking about the family or something, like completely irrelevant. If you saw the movie Zero Dark 30, about Bin Laden, there's this they get onto a helicopter, so there's a great cue, like blah blah blah, they're getting onto the helicopter, and then it's just like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
for like 5 minutes, man, they're on a helicopter and like nothing really happens, and it's like, hey, great P time. um, but then in movies that are just incredibly well edited, or like in Oppenheimer, there's just one short scene after another and you're jumping back and forth from one time to another. It makes it really difficult to summarize. You're like, man, would you just stick to a scene for 2.5, 3 minutes? So there was like one time in the movie that they stick to a scene. It's kind of like a building montage, basically,
Cool.
that is like the recommended P time in the movie.
Okay. Nice. So there's the
Yeah.
little bit of a background as to how it all happens. It's so cool. It's just a random app that actually is so useful, so helpful. What's the plan for the future for RunPee? What's the go?
Well, I'm always making little tweaks. So this one come up. I'm going to be working on a feature because so the user experience, if you're using the timer, it will tell you uh, start the timer when the Disney logo fades out or when the WB logo fades out. And it's usually as soon as the first production
Yep.
credit fades out, so that you can like see, like, okay, there's Universal. You wait for it. You wait for it. Okay, Universal's fading out, and go. You press the start timer button. Well, people have said, like, that's really cool, but I kind of feel awkward, like I'm holding my phone, and it is a dark screen. Like the
Hmm.
RunPee app is black
Yeah.
with white text, but still, you have to have your phone out and press a really big button. I make it really easy to press the button. Um, so I'm adding a feature so that you can flip your phone over to start the timer. And so what you'll do is,
Okay.
the phone, you can turn the screen off, and you basically enable the flip to start the timer. So you'll enable that, and you just hold your phone face up. And then when you see the cue to start the timer, you just flip your phone over and you'll feel a vibration and the timer has started.
Not bad. I like that.
Yeah. Cool.
I like that. That's really cool. Now, as you were developing this, as you were going through the process and, just trying to make this thing work, what was I guess, were there setbacks? Were there things that told you, you know what, this isn't worth pursuing, it's not worth going with? Or was it just a simple process all the way through?
Developing anything there's weeds that you get into, and it's like, man, this just should not be so hard. App development, it's amazing how much easier it's gotten over the years. So as a mobile app developer, that's what I do professionally.
Yep.
It's, like, oh, you want to do something like share part of the screen. Okay, well, used to that was like a month long. It was a lot of work to do something like that. Now you just import a package, bam, share. It takes like half an hour, and you're on to the next feature. So like everything, productivity has increased dramatically in app development. So
nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go back in time and be a developer.
So, okay, speaking about going back in time, we have our DeLorean segment. Before we end each show, I always like to ask my guest, if I sent you back 10 years, years to give yourself one piece of advice, what would that one piece of advice be for you, Dan?
So I'd say one of the biggest issues with the RunPee app has been how to monetize it. And you've been with us for a very long time, so you probably know, like, originally, there really, 14 years ago, there were no in-app purchases to speak of. I don't think there were any. You bought the app. So the app was a $1 download. And yeah, that's great, but RunPee isn't a once and done thing. Like, you get the app, but we continually have to, it's like, it would be like buying the difference between buying a book and buying a magazine. You buy a book, it's done. You buy a magazine, you don't expect to buy a magazine and get every issue of it forever going forward. So then we added subscription and, different ways of paying for it. Advertisements were really just a waste of time for everybody. They didn't make any money. So we have recently just gone to everything is free and you can donate if you want to. And that, I think, works better. The first thing is it lowers the friction to using the app. So, there are users out there, it's really sad, but they're like, I can't believe I have to pay for this, or I can't believe I have to watch ads. It's like, dude, man, this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, this isn't just a hobby of mine. Like, I have to pay to go see these movies. I have to take time out of my day. Every Thursday revolves around, seeing movies and stuff. And people would complain about, like, I can't believe you make us watch ads. I'm like, really? So now everything is completely free. There's no barriers. And if you wish to donate, you can donate as little as 29 cents. Or you can subscribe to donate $1 a month. Or nothing, and just use the app.
Well, good on you, Dan. Mate, I always say you're doing some work that other people wouldn't want to do. It's awesome. I thank you. I've used it for years. You guys have been awesome. I appreciate it. And man, I appreciate you jumping onto the podcast. I know this is a little bit unconventional. We're not the biggest podcast in the world, but you were so gracious with your time. So thank you so much for that, mate.
Yeah. Well, everybody starts somewhere. And so, you're building.
That's it, mate. That's it. Well, ladies and gents, make sure you follow RunPee, download the app, do all that stuff. Make sure you send some support over to Dan and his team. They're awesome. They're doing some great stuff. And while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on all the social medias, and we'll keep you updated next time we're around. Dan, thanks for talking to me, mate.
Thank you.